but it's not something that you just want to dive into. Now, I'm going to give you a little more than that in just a second. Now, here's the thing, because Brooks is getting there and Bree is getting there, but this is also extremely testable, folks. Here's the thing. The word broker does imply that you can operate independently. So when you take your post-licensing courses and you move to a broker, aka full broker, aka non-provisional broker, folks, I'll tell you the terrible joke that I always tell people in pre-licensing class is that your new favorite breakfast cereal until the day this class is over is Synonym Toast Crunch. You see what I did there? It's a play on words. Because there are so many different... Don't you judge me, Brooks. Okay, listen, dad jokes, man. Dad jokes. All right, no, I know. All right, listen, I know. For shame. Because there are so many words for different things like this, right? All three of these mean the exact same thing on the test. And you will find that there's a lot of these. And so you got to make sure you answer these appropriately. Now, here's the $1 million thing that I need you to learn, kind of alluding to what you were saying. Folks, a full broker in North Carolina can activate their license on their own without a broker in charge. They can. However, while they can activate their license on their own without a broker in charge and operate as an independent sole proprietor with their broker's license, there are certain things that you can only do if you have a BIC. And those things are advertise, have a trust account, and affiliate other brokers. Let me reword that for you. If you are an independent sole proprietor full broker with no BIC, you cannot advertise, you cannot have trust accounts, and you cannot affiliate other brokers. Folks, let me expand or extrapolate on what I mean by advertising. You cannot pass out business cards. You cannot tell people by word of mouth you're a broker. You cannot have a website. You cannot have a Facebook page. Nothing. Do you think you're going to have a very successful career in real estate without the ability to advertise in any way, shape, and form? No. So that answers the question that you were so eager to hear. Could you operate without a BIC as a full broker? Sure. Is it basically worthless? Yes. Because you can't even tell people you're a broker. That would be violating license law and commission rules. Pretty worthless. The only reason people ever really sit on that status, let's say that you do it for 2 years and you decide, man, this sucks. I thought I was going to like that more than I did. Don't let your license go. I know one of you did that, right? One of you's back in this class because you let your license go. I don't remember who it was, but one of you did it. And so you don't want to be back in this class again. So you keep your license up and you keep it on that status. Why? Because the people that you helped over the past 2 years, if somebody calls you up and says, hey, can you still help me? As an unsolicited buyer, sure you can. And you can still collect a commission. You've got an active broker's license. You didn't advertise. They were from the past. Same thing too. If a past client calls you up and says, well, hey, can you help me? And you're not interested, you could send it to another broker and collect a referral fee. Beverly, which part do you want me to repeat? I'm about to sneeze.
What a full broker can do on their own without a BIC. It was advertise, affiliate.
No, that's what they can't do.
Cannot. Oh,
They cannot do any of those things if they don't have a BIC. They cannot advertise in any way, shape, and form their broker services. They cannot affiliate other brokers, and they cannot have a trust account.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's the thing, though. If a test question says, can a full broker activate their license and operate independently as a sole proprietor? Your answer is yes. Everybody understand this? If it asks if they can advertise, your answer is no. But you've got to understand the exact details that these questions are going to get into. So if it says, okay, well, Brad finished his post-licensing, which of the following would be a reasonable course of action for Brad now with his new license status? Brad can go independent as a sole proprietor full broker. True. Absolutely true. Don't worry about the fact that he can't advertise or do other stuff. That's not the question. Rose says, can we know why they can't? Sure you can. It's the same reason that Brooks got earlier. Because the law says so. That's it. It quite literally said, folks, let me show you this. If you don't like, I'm going to show you because I think it's interesting and important to kind of see exactly what I'm telling you. This actually falls under, and this is where the license law and commission rulebook is, as I kind of pointed out, just really convoluted. It's got a lot going on, but it's actually under the broker in charge rule, which is 0110. So if you look right here, every sole proprietorship shall designate a BIC if the sole proprietorship, one, engages in any transaction where a broker is required to deposit and maintain monies belonging to others in a trust account. Two, engages in advertising or promoting services as a broker in any manner. Or three, has one or more other brokers affiliated with the sole proprietorship in the real estate business. In other words, you can't do these things as a sole proprietorship without a BIC. Now, I kind of mentioned yesterday what the comment section was, and so let me just give you a little more insight into this. I told you the comment section is where it tries to help you understand things that are a little more convoluted in these laws and rules. So if I go down to the comment section, I'll show you full circle here. Folks, this is the laws and rules in North Carolina. If you go down and you find 0110, which we just looked at, you will see some very interesting language. What's there? Right here, in addition, so this is, you can see like this is clarifying like pieces of 0110. So the same rule we just looked at, but it's giving you kind of like the layman's terms, trying to explain it in an easier to understand format. So the sole proprietor is, in addition to each firm having to have a broker in charge for each office, most broker sole proprietors, including sole practitioners, also must be a broker in charge. The rule provides that every sole proprietorship shall designate a broker in charge if the sole proprietorship engages where they're required to deposit monies, engages in advertising, or has more than one affiliated brokers. But this is the piece right here that I just explained to you. The most misunderstood of the three broker in charge triggering requirements for sole proprietor cited above is number 2, engages in advertising or promoting services as a broker in any manner. Acts of sole proprietor that trigger the BIC requirement under number 2 include, but are not limited to, placing an advertisement for services as a broker in any form or any medium, distributing business cards indicating they are a real estate broker, orally soliciting the real estate business of others, or listing a property for sale, which inherently involves holding oneself out as a broker in advertising. So at the end of the day, a full broker, sole proprietor without a BIC, they can collect non-solicited referral fees and help non-solicited buyers. That's it. Because the law says so. There you go. Them's the rules. So here's a question for you. And just like before, take a look at it. You read it. Give me the answer in the chat once you figure it out, and then we'll talk about it. A little more unanimous here. I like it. The question is, which of the following would be a correct statement regarding a provisional broker in North Carolina? A says a provisional broker can operate independently once they begin to take post-licensing. Nope. They cannot do anything unless they have a BIC. B, provisional brokers have their license issued on active status. Nope, it's issued on inactive status. C says provisional brokers can become full brokers as fast as they want by taking the 90 hours of post-licensing. That is true. As long as you get your post-licensing done, that is all it takes to move from provisional brokers to full brokers. So C is your correct answer there. D says provisional brokers must wait until they are affiliated to take post-licensing. That's not true. We said you can take post-licensing as an inactive broker. Folks, the day your license is issued, the number is issued, you can start taking post-licensing. As an inactive broker, you can still take it. No problem. So let me add in another layer to these discussions with your license and statuses, folks. Of course, this is the initial education for pre-licensing. And then we've got post-licensing, which is those 90 hours. And then thankfully, once you get done with that, the big education is gone. But folks, you have a license. And typically, anytime you have a license, there's what we call continuing education. This is no different. So there is continuing education that gets triggered at certain points and will go on until the day you die or turn your license in, whichever occurs first. So let me throw out some details here, folks. When we're dealing with our licensing year, we do not operate on a calendar year. We'll call it our fiscal year. Our fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th. That is how our years run. So basically, we renew our licenses every year by June 30th, and then we're in a new renewal year thereafter. So right now, as I'm sitting here teaching you, I am currently sitting in what's called a 2024-2025 licensing year. Started on July 1st of 2024, ends on June 30th of 2025. So we call it 24-25 licensing year. And then, of course, next July will be in the 25-26 licensing year, so on and so forth. Well, the way that this works, folks, is when you all get your licenses, let's say that you get them in December. That is called your license issuance. Okay, that's the first time. That's your license issuance. Every single broker has to renew their license at the end of the licensing year by June 30th in order to keep their license on current status. We call that renewals. And so there is CE and there are renewals and there's different time frames. So renewal, here's the way to think about it, folks, because there are these other statuses with your license. Your license could be active or inactive, as we talked about with a provisional broker. But your license can also be what we call current or expired. Think of it this way. Currency keeps you current. Failure to pay that currency will make you expired. Failure to pay those expenses make you expired. So even though you all will get your licenses issued, let's say in December, every single one of you will still have to pay $45 as the renewal fee by June 30th of 2025 in order to get your license. In other words, what happens is every license is set to expire at midnight on June 30th. And if and only if you paid them $45, do they reissue you a new one on July 1. Now, does your piece of paper change? No, it's a status thing. Your piece of paper is not getting sent out to you every single year. It's the same piece of paper. Everybody with me on the current part, right? These are very testable because you've got to be able to differentiate between what makes you active or inactive versus current and expired. So currency is your $45 renewal fee we all have to pay by June 30th every year. And there is no prorations for this. Every single one of you, even though you will be basically halfway through the year when you get your license, will still pay $45 just like I will to keep your license current on July 1. So here's the other side of it. Continuing education, they give you a little bit of grace on, folks. You do not have to start taking CE until you have renewed your license once. That means if you all get your licenses issued in December, you will be renewing your license for the first time when?
June 30th.
Yeah, by June 30th of 2025, right? The new year. You will be paying your renewals next June, this upcoming June, just like I will. Which means that July 1 of 2025, you all will now be in what we call your second renewal year. Meaning leading up to your second renewal. Does that make sense, everybody? And so that is when you're required to start taking CE. It starts in your second renewal year, and the deadline is June 10th. So you can take continuing education, CE, anytime between July 1 of 2025 and June 10th of 2026. None of you will have to take CE by June 10th of 2025. You will get to skip this upcoming deadline because you have not renewed your license once. So in other words, CE starts after your first renewal, or in other words, in your second renewal year. And then the deadline is June 10th every year until the day you die or turn your license in. And your CE is comprised of two classes. 4 hours of update, 4 hours of elective, for a total of 8 hours of continuing education. Now, education, aside from the provisional broker side of things, which we've already talked about how a provisional broker is active versus inactive, but education is also going to make you active versus inactive. As long as you are a broker on active status and you stay in good standing on your education, you'll stay active. But if you have an education deficiency, your license will go back to inactive status. Now, this is very important. Listen to me very carefully. This one right here, expired. Expired is a standalone status, folks. You have to understand this. So let's say that you took your CE when it was required, but you failed to pay your renewal fees. We do not call you active and expired. We can't. We won't. Expired is a standalone status. It does not matter if you're good on everything else. We still just call you expired. So let me give you an example of a test question. Chelsea took her 8 hours of continuing education prior to June 10th, but failed to pay her renewal fee by June 30th. What is the status of Chelsea's license on July 1? And it's going to give you the option of active and expired, current and inactive, expired only, inactive only. And you've got to pick expired only, because even though she was good on education, expired is standalone. You are never anything else if you don't pay your dues. Does that make sense? And they will try to rip you apart on this. This is such a trivial and easy thing, but because there's so much language, it has a tendency to get confusing. Now, every other combination exists, though. So you could be current and active, which is the only status that you can play real estate on. Or you could be current and inactive. So your license, you paid the dues, you're up to date, but inactive, you can't use it. So that'd be what you are when you get your license issued. It'd be current as a provisional broker, but you'd be inactive because you haven't activated your license yet. The only status that you're allowed to play real estate, do brokerage activities on, is current and active. Have to be both. What are you talking about, the 28th, Raphael?
My question is, if they have the same question that you elaborated, but they say, oh, by June 28th, they haven't paid. And then, the options would be active and current.
So they shouldn't be asking that. Now, if they do, it's a very unique style of question, because technically you have until 11:59 p.m. on June 30th to pay. So on June 28th, you're still in good standing for the current licensing year, and you still have time. So you're not expired yet. It's just you can pay as early as May 15th of any given year. So as soon as it hits May 15th of 2025, I can pay my dues, and so could y'all. But you have to pay no later than 11:59 p.m. on June 30th. Because at midnight, your license is expiring if you didn't. Yeah. Yep, good deal. What you got, Beverly?
So what is the process if you let your license expire due to, you're currently on expired status from non-payment of that renewal? What is the recourse like to reinstate at that point?
Yeah. Hang tight. I'm going to explain that to you, but I want to just talk about these a little bit more before I explain the punishments, if you will. So I'm going to talk about what happens if you go expired and what happens if you go inactive, because those are testable as well. But just give me 1 second, I'll circle back around to that. Yeah. What you got, Gerald?
This might be something else that you're about to cover, but once we're first licensed as a provisional broker, we're inactive. What makes us become active? Submitting that form with the BIC?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you get your license issued on provisional and inactive status, so long as you're provisional, the only way to activate is submit Form 2.08 with a BIC. And that means they're supervising you, they've activated you, and you can do real estate. Now, to that point, Gerald, if you fail to get your post-licensing done within those 18 months, that'd be an education deficiency. You'd bump back down to inactive. And then same thing too, if let's say timing wise you had to take CE as a provisional broker and you failed to take that on time, you would also bump back down to inactive. But yeah, in order to activate, it's affiliate with a BIC as a PB. Now, folks, a couple pieces of clarification. I'm going to answer Beverly's question, but I just want to talk about this chart a little bit more and give you a little more insight because it is dependent on the renewal year. So the deadline for CE is starting in your second renewal year, or in other words, after your first renewal, and then it's prior to June 10th. But let me give you a point of clarity here. Let's say that Jack got his license in December, and so now it's the next year, and Jack needs to take CE by June 10th of 2026, just like the rest of y'all would. And let's say that Jack fails to take CE by June 10th. Well, folks, they do not allow us to teach CE between June 11th and June 30th. They have a blackout period. It cannot be taught. You cannot take it. There is, in other words, nothing you can do to remedy it. But your license will remain active up until June 30th. It will not go inactive until the new licensing year, July 1. But there's nothing you can do to stop it from going inactive on July 1. Does that make sense? So let me start out kind of talking about the punishments a little bit. And I'm going to rehash this a couple different times because I know this is a lot. Okay, I know it's a lot of language. It's a lot. You've never even heard of a license until yesterday, and then you're like, it's a lot. Brianna says, how early can you take CE? You can take it as early as July 1, but the deadline is June 10th of the following year. Anytime within that licensing year up to June 10th that you're required to take it. So like, for example, I've already had plenty of students take it this year for the current licensing year, but most real estate brokers are slackers and they don't take it until closer to the deadline. So I get really busy around like April, May, and June, to say the least, teaching classes. But let's talk about the punishments that Beverly was asking about. Let's say that you didn't take your 4 hours of update and your 4 hours of elective by June 10th. I told you there's nothing you can do to stop from going inactive on July 1, but you'd stay active until June 30th. Well, here's what the commission says. They say, okay, well, you can't be trusted to take your crap on time. So here's how we're going to punish you. You now have to take in the new licensing year your 4 hours of update for the new licensing year, your 4 hours of elective for the new licensing year, and you have to take 2 4-hour electives to make up for the 8 hours you missed in the previous year. In other words, take the new year's plus what you missed before we'll let you reactivate. So you're not really having to take extra, you're just having to take it all at once. So you're already done for the year. So 16 hours before you can reactivate. Now, folks, if you go more than a year, meaning going like 2 years without taking CE, you can always fix an education deficiency. But now they're going to say, well, it's not even worth taking electives anymore. So you're going to take your 4 hours of update for the new year, your 4 hours of elective for the new year, and you're going to take 2 post-licensing classes to make up for all the crap you missed. So they will sometimes throw post-licensing in to make up for education. So there's your punishment for going inactive. Now, the direct question that Beverly asked was, well, what happens if you go expired? Depends. Adult diapers, right, Beverly? If you go expired by 1 day and up to 6 months, meaning you don't pay and it turns July 1, it automatically doubles. Instead of $45, it's $90. You also have to answer some questions, and you have to fill out an activation form to reactivate your license. Now, if you're expired for more than 6 months, but less than 2 years, you have to do a background check. You have to do a full-fledged reinstatement application. It's still $90. And as punishment, they make you either take a post-licensing class or the state licensing exam again. And if you're expired for more than 2 years, you're back in this class. Pre-licensing. Over again. Yeah. So education can always be fixed, but my recommendation is always pay the money. Because you do not want to be back in this class again over, I was thinking I didn't really need the license. $45 a year. Pay the stinking money. Listen, most people spend more than that on coffee at Starbucks in a month. Pay the money. Okay? $45? Yeah, do it. Also, just as a side note, like Ashley, you got like not Dar, the other one. You got like ghouls or goblins. You got like some good, like it looked like your power flickered and you're like looking around for a second. Did you?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Okay, I didn't imagine that. I did see that.
I'm trying to figure out what happened.
Okay, yeah. Just listen. It's October, right? Maybe just a little possessed. I don't know. I just saw that. I'm like, did I just see that? Like the lights flickered. She's looking around. If anybody like ghostly figures come up behind you, I'll try to warn you. So I'm watching. I got you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. So have to be current and active to do real estate brokerage activities, folks. Of course, we've just kind of outlined this. And so a couple more details here, as I've already kind of shared. You can pay your renewal fee as early as May 15th. Unfortunately, you can't pay any earlier than that. And so anytime between May 15th and June 30th, you pay your $45. And that's to renew your license. Well, which licenses are we talking about? All of them. If you are a broker and have a broker's license, pay $45 to renew that. If you have a firm license, you'd pay $45 to renew that. And if you have an LNCL, that limited non-resident commercial license, you would pay $45 to renew that. Now, folks, if you are a broker who also creates a firm, an entity, and gets a firm license, you'd be paying $90 a year because you'd be paying $45 for your broker's license and $45 for your firm license. So just keep that in mind. That's something they could test you on or ask you questions on the test for the North Carolina portion. So this is just rehashing everything I've already taught you. I'm not a slide reader. I just talk to you, and then the slides are there to reiterate everything I've said for those of you who are visual. So you've got to pay $45. Now, here's the thing that I'll tell you, folks, and it won't affect any of you from a testable point of view, but I want you to understand something. While I'm showing you that license law and rule book, laws and rules can change every single year. So please understand that as I'm sitting here teaching this to you, everything I'm teaching you is completely accurate. However, let's say that 6 months from now, when the new year, licensing year starts, laws and rules could be amended. And so it could be that when you go to take post-licensing in like August of next year, you're like, well, that's not what Seth taught me. Yeah, that's probably because the law or rule changed. So there's a lot of discussions on proposed rule changes right now that are potentially coming down the pipeline. Will that affect your test at all? No. But just keep that in mind. Things do change. The real reason I'm telling you this is because one of the biggest proposed rule changes they are discussing at the commission level right now is raising the fee from $45 to a different amount. But as it sits right now, it's $45. So it's been $45 the entire time I've had my license, which is in over 9 years. But they are discussing raising it. I think they said there's like a statutory limit where they can't do it more than like $5 at a time. So don't panic. It's not going to be astronomical. But for the sake of your test, the answer is $45 and will be for a while. So current license means you paid your fees, right? Currency keeps you current. Failure to pay expenses make you expire. Think of it like the old school parking meters. It's hard to say the new age ones because they're all digital and everybody's using an app. But the old school ones, when the money ran out, they had that big red lettering that said expired. Now, when you're paying those dues, you have to do it online and you have to do it with a card. And no, you can't do it before May 15th. As much as we'd like to just prepay years in advance, they don't let us. So, and here is that parking meter I was telling you about. I told you expired is a standalone status. If you don't pay your dues, it doesn't matter if you're good on education, it doesn't matter anything else. You are expired. And you can do nothing with an expired license. Expired license can never be active. I've already talked about this as well. How do you fix it? Doubles the cost, $90. If it's 1 day up to 6 months, $90, and you have to answer some questions and reactivate. If it's 6 months to 2 years, they punish you with a post-licensing class or the state licensing exam, and if it's over 2 years, you're back in pre-licensing. No bueno. Now, there's one thing that I haven't pointed out yet for why expired is also a bad thing. I'm going to say hang tight, and I'm just going to kind of go down a rabbit hole with you as we wrap up this section in just a second. I just don't want you to group it in this category. I want you to have it as kind of a standalone thought. So you'll see what I mean in just a second. I'll circle back around. Of course, we said active is the only status you can do brokerage on. Folks, some of this is just redundant, just reiterating. This is things that we're going to talk about time and time again. I'll quiz you on this later because these are all exceptionally testable pieces of the North Carolina side of, hey, they didn't pay their dues. What's the status of their license? Or, hey, they, didn't do this. What would happen? Or, things like that. And, of course, the difference between provisional and non-provisional. Folks, let me go down, because I already talked about all this. I want to stop right here, and I want to go off on a little bit of a tangent. I don't have a slide in it yet because I don't want it to confuse you, but I do want to explain a couple of things just so you can understand the differentiation. We spent a lot of time, just moments ago, clarifying all the details of a provisional broker and how you move from provisional to full broker and what a provisional versus a full broker can and can't do. And yeah, we're going to talk about that more later. But what I didn't spend time on yet, because I didn't want to confuse you, but I'm going to just say it here, is the BIC versus BIC eligible broker. Folks, there is no requirement to ever go to the BIC or BIC eligible status. Most people become full brokers and they stay there. And to the conversations we had earlier, most full brokers stay affiliated with firms. Why? Because as you see, that a independent sole proprietor is pretty useless if you're not a BIC or if you don't have a BIC. It's kind of useless. But let me talk about the criteria to be a BIC eligible broker or a BIC. The only difference being BIC eligible is sitting at the ready. BIC is actively overseeing some firm or some sole proprietorship. That's it. That's the only difference. One is actively BICing, one is sitting at the ready. So the criteria to be a BIC or BIC eligible broker is, yet again, this is one of the things we're talking about changing. And so it may or may not change later. But right now, you have to have 2 years of full-time brokerage experience within the past 5 years. You have to be a full broker, and you have to be on active status. Now, the other piece is, as long as you meet those criteria, you can designate with a form as a BIC or BIC eligible broker. It's called Form 2.25. And there is another piece of the puzzle, which is a 12-hour broker in charge course that you would have to take. Interesting thing with that course, and this will be on later slides, I'm just giving you this insight. The interesting thing with that course is you can take it up to a year in advance, meaning it's good for a year, but you have to take it. If you didn't take the course before you designated as BIC or BIC eligible, you have to take the course within 120 days of designating as BIC or BIC eligible in order to keep that status. And so these are some of the things that are going to come up. Well, there's a couple reasons why I'm telling you this. Number one, it didn't sound like too terrible of a punishment whenever I said you go expired earlier, and Beverly asked the question. But if you're a BIC or BIC eligible broker and you go expired or inactive, you lose your BIC status, which means that you would have to reapply for it, which means you may have to take that 12-hour broker in charge course again, and you would have to meet those same criteria. So that's kind of a big deal. The other clarification is, when we're talking about CE, I said you had to take 4 hours of update and 4 hours of elective. If you're a provisional broker or a full broker, your update course is called Gen Up. So you would take Gen Up and a 4-hour elective. If you're a BIC or BIC eligible broker, your update course is called BIC Up. So you take 4 hours of BIC Up and 4 hours of elective. That's it. Basically the same course, just slight nuances between the statuses. So let me throw one more curveball in the mix as we wrap up this section. Synthil, Gen Up is short for General Update. That's just the name of the update course for provisional brokers and full brokers. Gen Up stands for General Update. BIC Up stands for BIC Update. So if you're a provisional broker or a full broker, the update course you take is called Gen Up. And if you're a BIC or BIC eligible broker, the update course you take is called BIC Up. So let's go back to a full broker. Folks, what did we say? A full broker, meaning you've taken your post-licensing class. So what did we say a full broker could do? What was unique about being a full broker compared to a provisional broker? Yeah, Brianna says unsupervised sales. Yep, you can activate your own license. There you go. You can activate your own license without the need for a broker in charge. But what do we say that you couldn't do if you didn't have a broker in charge? What were the 3 things that an independent, sole proprietor, full broker could not do? Advertise.
They can't hold a trust account.
Yep, no advertisements, no trust accounts. What was the last one?
Take on affiliates?
Yeah, cannot affiliate other brokers. There you go.
Yeah.
Now, here's where I'm going with this, folks. For about 2 years, I operated as an independent sole proprietor. But I could advertise. I could have trust accounts. And I could affiliate other brokers. Why do you think that is? There you go. I am a BIC. So I was my own BIC. So I was BIC of my sole proprietorship. And by having a BIC of my sole proprietorship could do everything that a brokerage firm can do. There was inherently zero difference between what a Coldwell banker can do and what I could do because I had a sole proprietor with a BIC. Does that make sense for everybody? You got to understand there's going to be a lot of different styles of questions on, well, can this firm do this? Can the sole proprietor do this? Can the sole proprietor do this if they have a BIC? There's going to be a lot. Now, we're going to get into that way more in detail later. This is just really the big old introduction to some of these crazy vocab North Carolina things. So we're starting to build a foundational knowledge as we get into other stuff. So
The real definition of what a sole proprietor is, because I feel like I'm just not getting that right now.
It's a very difficult concept. So please, by all means, ask a question.
I guess, yeah, it's just like, what is a sole proprietorship? Like, that definition of what it is. Because I feel like I'm getting it confused with, like, broker in some way. I don't know. I'm not really understanding, I guess, the main thing of what it is.
Yeah, so let me see if I can clarify it in a couple ways. Before we get into the sole proprietorship aspect of things, let's go back to the Microsoft entity. Can we agree that Microsoft is an entity? It's a company, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And can we agree that Coldwell Banker is also a company?
Right.
Right. Microsoft, we talked about as a company being an exception for certain things because an entity owning real estate can sell its own real estate. But that's because Microsoft is not in the business of brokerage. It doesn't need a broker's license. When we're talking about entities, in the brokerage aspect, they need a firm license because they're doing brokerage activities, right? You agree they're helping people buy and sell real estate for money, yeah?
Right.
So all that a sole proprietorship is, kind of think about that comparison, it's somebody operating a business through themselves. Savannah, if you wanted to go out and start a cleaning company today with the requisite insurances, you could, even without creating an entity. And really, for all intents and purposes, you'd be a sole proprietorship. You're operating a business and it's passing through Savannah. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's just that because we're talking about real estate, it's operating a business through a person, and that person is allowed to do brokerage because they have a broker's license. You don't need a broker's license to start a cleaning company, Savannah, but if I'm doing brokerage business through myself, I still need a broker's license. That's all it is. A sole proprietorship is somebody operating a business, maintaining a liability independently, and everything passing through them personally. Because they've never created an entity, they've never opened business bank accounts, they're using personal bank accounts, things of that nature. Does that make sense?
Yes. So I guess my follow-up question, do they have to be a BIC to be a sole proprietorship then? Or can they just be like a full broker?
Well, the answer to that is depends. Because remember, a full broker, sole proprietor can exist, but all they're limited to is unsolicited buyers and unsolicited referral fees because they can't advertise. So if you want to do more than that, you would have to have a BIC of a sole proprietorship. But if you're only doing unsolicited referrals and unsolicited buyers that fall into your lap, you don't have to have a BIC.
Okay, gotcha. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
And it's a lot. I know it's a lot. I mean, especially like for this to be like the entry level discussion of a brand new brokerage class. I warned you. Like I don't expect y'all to grasp it fully, and I've kind of warned y'all. These are very advanced concepts. Is this the only time you're going to hear them? No. We're going to talk about them a lot, but I always like to rip that Band-Aid so you can start mulling over these difficult concepts right now, and then I can tie it into other things later, and it'll start to make more sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So, folks, that wraps up. Also, make sure you get your cameras on for me so I know you're live and well in with us. That wraps up kind of this introductory section. As I said, we're just ripping the Band-Aid and going into some of the more specific aspects, to say the least, is what we'll call them. And I don't know why my files are all wonky. Give me 1 second here. Real quick, while I'm trying to find these files, let me just kind of recap some of this vocab with you folks. Of course, a provisional broker is where you folks are all going to start, right? That baby broker cannot operate without supervision in North Carolina. It's on a national point of view, it's kind of the equivalent of a salesperson. Broker, somebody who can operate independently. Now, North Carolina, that is in a very, very limited capacity. And so, of course, you have to take your 3 30-hour post-licensing courses in no particular order to move into that broker, also called a non-provisional broker, also called a full broker in North Carolina. Of course, broker in charge and BIC eligible, 2 years of full-time brokerage experience within the past 5 years. Have to be a full broker on active status, and there is that 12-hour broker in charge course that can be taken up to a year in advance of designating as BIC or BIC eligible, or at the very least has to be taken within 120 days of designating as BIC or BIC eligible. A firm is a licensed business entity that's doing brokerage activities. So your Cole Bankers, Keller Williams, right? You've created an entity with the Secretary of State, partnership, corporation, limited liability company, something like that. LNCL, special category of license. It is exactly what it sounds like. It is limited. It is for non-residents. It is to transact commercial brokerage only. Has to have that declaration of affiliation with the resident North Carolina broker and the cooperation agreement with the resident North Carolina broker. LL Beans is your acronym for brokerage activity. If you list, lease, buy, exchange, auction, negotiate, sell, and now that includes doing, offering to do, or referring to do those things, and it deals with real property for others for compensation, a license is required in North Carolina. Of course, we've talked about active versus inactive. Typically, that deals with education. The only exception to that is a provisional broker. Always starts out as inactive until they get supervision. Current versus expired deals with your money. That's your renewal fee. $45 due by what date?
June 30th.
June 30th. Every single year. It's never prorated. June 30th is the deadline. Currency keeps you current. Failure to pay those expenses will make you expired. Remember, expired is a standalone status. So if you don't pay your dues, you are always just expired, no matter that you're good on education or not. Doesn't matter. Sole proprietorship. We just had a conversation with Savannah. She asked a very good question. It's just operating independently, right? You have not created an entity. Your business is passing through you, the person. It's just in real estate, we're talking about brokerage business. And so you're doing it business passing through you by way of your broker's license. You don't need a firm license because there is no entity. There's no firm. And then, of course, an entity would be something created with the Secretary of State, a limited liability company, a partnership, a corporation, something along those lines. And as I said, that's just scratching the surface there on some much more in-depth conversations that we will have down the road.